Hey, Betty.
So Claudia, so I have to share this little story. So Claudia and I know each other because of a professional group that we're in called Mindshare, the mastermind. And I remember one of the first conversations we had, I was talking about the fact that I had a problem with distance vision, but I was very non-compliant on wearing my glasses and that I never ever wear them unless I absolutely have to. And what Claudia said blew me away. And so let's start. I want you to talk about your story, but then I want you to share why that was such an important conversation. But how did you get into vision?
So, like many of us doing what we're doing, we had a problem with this thing, right? And I had glasses. I got my first pair of glasses at the age of 3. And then I got into school at 6 and I was bullied and teased. I was farsighted. I had a squint, meaning my right eye was turning in, astigmatism too. And back then, when I was born in the 60s, I was the only kid in school that had glasses. So I was bullied, I was teased. I felt like I was this weird kid. I didn't have any friends. And as I got older, like that got even worse, right? Then you get into the early teenage years. So I felt really lonely and disconnected from everybody. And then at some point, and somebody invited me to play on the handball team, and I wasn't athletic. It was literally just they had no girl players. So I joined, and the coach said, "You can't wear your glasses because they were glass, not like today they're more out of plastic material, right?" So I didn't wear my glasses. We practiced a lot, and 3 years into that, the eye doctor said, "Your eyes are normal," and I was like, "What?" Like I was so happy. I was just 15. I was like just at that age where, you want to get into boys. And I was so happy. And then during my high school exam, I studied a lot and my vision got blurry again. And that's really freaked me out. I was like, I just tasted this freedom. I don't want to wear glasses again. And I found a book on vision improvement. I did the things in there and I stayed out of glasses to my mid 30s. Then I was in a difficult marriage and in divorce. And then in my early 40s, I mean, from the mid 30s to early 40s, I was back in glasses. And at some point, I thought, like, I had this epiphany, Betty. It was exactly like this. I came home from a party. I got lost. I was like really stressed out, right? Got lost in the freeways. Back then, we had these tiny maps, not the Google maps. And I got home and I took my glasses off. And at that moment, my vision was so, so blurry, like way worse than it is before I put the glasses on, right? So I was like, this does not feel right. Like, why is it worse? And I found that book again. I dug it out. And at that point, I needed more help. I was in my early 40s. I hired a teacher, and long story short, eventually did the teacher training. And I've been out of glasses since over 20 years now.
Yeah, I think your story reflects a lot I mean, so many people, I'm a little bit younger than you, but not by much. But we started doing, vision testing in kids. And so all of a sudden, all kinds like my husband got LASIK, which is a whole nother conversation. But I remember when I met him, he was like, I can't tell it's you. If I take my glasses off or my contacts, my vision is so poor from childhood that I couldn't tell it was you. And I think that there's just this assumption that we're going to have to wear glasses, and especially if you had it when you were younger. But then we have sort of the vision changes that occur as we get older, and it's just kind of a rite of passage. And like I said to you, I went all the way through high school without needing glasses. And the first time I felt like I needed glasses, I moved to a town in Kentucky. I got moved by my company, and I was used to living in Dallas where there's street lights, everything's well lit. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, I'm in this country roads with no street lights and I can't see the road. And that was the first time I put on glasses for distance. But I was always really non-compliant, honestly. I would either wear my contacts or I wouldn't wear my glasses. But then as I got older, I got very non-compliant, you know?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, glasses, I always say, how have we accepted a treatment that makes your condition worse? Because once you start wearing glasses, no, I mean, I was lucky as a kid, to be honest. And I think playing handball and hand-eye coordination, peripheral vision, being outside, natural light, all these things, right? Kind of did it. I don't know. I mean, back then I wasn't trained as a teacher, but I would make assumptions on this. So I see when people, I actually was interviewed in a podcast many years ago, and I gave her a few things. She said she wanted to test it for us, right? So I gave her a few of the practices that we're going to talk about. And I said she didn't wear her glasses for 2 weeks, and she was nearsighted, but not very strong. And she said to me, so when she interviewed me 2 weeks later, she said, I actually didn't do any of the things you told me. I just didn't wear my contacts or my glasses. and I put them back in and they're way too strong. So just not wearing them, you know, and being outside, she also walks a lot in nature. But that was so interesting. And I think that's exactly what happened to you and to me, like, you know, not wearing them. And in addition, sometimes that's not enough. For many listeners, you might be like, well, I can't just not wear my glasses. So we can talk about how to approach that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, my actual vision never really changed. Like, so my prescription has always roughly been the same. So I feel like I've kind of saved myself progressively getting worse. So tell my listeners, in case they're not clear, you know, we have different types of visual changes, whether it's nearsighted, farsighted, astigmatism. Define some of those just in case they're not sure what they may be.
So I think there's always a lot of confusions about the language, and it's kind of confusing. So a nearsighted person, or sometimes called short-sighted, means that your vision is best close up. So a nearsighted person might be able to read without glasses. If it's not too strong, they might even be able to be on the computer without glasses. But one for driving and for other distance tasks, they need glasses. A farsighted person is somebody who can see best in the distance and has blurrier vision up close. And there's a little bit of a difference between the true hyperopia that I had as a kid, where even the middle distance isn't clear. Like it's just, but it gets worse as you get closer. And then what we call presbyopia is usually when you get in your 40s, 50s, your near vision declines and you start with reading glasses, right? And I want to talk about glasses with you definitely, because if you wear reading glasses, you immediately know when you look up with the reading glasses on, everything is blurry. You already realize that the diopters, the strength in your glasses is very specific to a distance, which most nearsighted people don't realize. And then the astigmatism is probably the most confusing conditions. All of these three, nearsighted, farsighted, and astigmatism, are so-called refractive errors, meaning they are referring to the refraction of the light through the cornea and the lens onto the retina. So there's something going on that the light beams are not projected onto the retina properly. And astigmatism can be near or farsighted, and it often comes in addition to near or farsightedness. So it's basically an uneven, think of an uneven shape of the cornea. So sometimes the doctors even say, I had clients tell me, my cornea is football shaped, and they're like, what does that mean? So instead of a dome shape, like think of a sliver of a basketball, the cornea has a steeper and a flatter angle. And that is the axis in your prescription. So when you see the axis is the flatter angle, and that is usually based on, for those of you watching the video, there's like, we have 6 outer eye muscles. And if some of these muscles are more tense, they kind of squeeze more on the eyeball, and basically the cornea is not even. And astigmatism is super common. Most of the time, if it's under 1 diopters, which you see in your cylinder, in your prescription, you don't even notice it in your glasses. And then, so then we have the fusion problems, which relates to all kind of problems with the 2 eyes, how the 2 eyes work together. You might even have perfect eyesight, but maybe one eye, the 2 eyes don't work together. So you either get double vision, which is very irritating to the brain. Usually the brain is like, that's no good. It turns off 1 eye, and that's what's then known as amblyopia or lazy eye. Strabismus or squint is when 1 or both eyes don't look straight, they look off to the side or to the nose, and that could be intermittent, or it could be always all the time. And then lastly, we have the eye diseases, right? Most commonly known as cataracts, glaucoma, age-related macular degeneration. So that's kind of the broad overview over the different challenges that I work with.
Yes. Okay. So I have to ask this question because I'm sure other people have heard this. So I wore contacts, right, for my near vision. And I always, like I said, anytime I tried to go up prescription, I couldn't see, you do the little test and they're like, you need to go up. And I'd be like, no, I need to go back down. But I remember when I started having a hard time when I had correction in, right? So when I had my contacts in, you wake up one day at about 45 and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't really see my phone, right? And I remember going to my ophthalmologist and saying, okay, this is what's going on. She was like, well, just take one of your contacts out.
Ooh.
I know. I was like, I don't like that. And she's like, well, you could just do that. It won't make a difference. I said, it will make a difference to my brain. And she said, no, it won't. I was like, yeah, no, I feel it. It feels weird. So let's talk about that. Because I bet you there's people that have been told that.
That is a good topic. First of all, to clarify, you said for your near vision, you mean you are nearsighted.
Yes,
so the contacts are for your distance vision. That's why we have to be very clear. Okay.
Yes.
So I mentioned that how people with reading glasses immediately know when they look up with the reading glasses, everything is blurry. So diopters, which is the strength of the lens, diopters only work for specific distances. And that's why most people, we can talk about that later, end up in bifocals or progressives. So basically, you as a nearsighted person, if you're corrected for distance vision, for 20 feet and beyond, now those diopters, and as a nearsighted person, your diopters will be stronger for distance because that's why you have the most challenge. And when you look up close, if you didn't have contacts, you might even be able to read a book without contacts in, right? So the diopters for your near vision are not the same as for your distance vision, but you kind of get so used to wearing them all day, even if you spend 8 hours on the computer. And that's something, a little detour right now, that I tell all my clients. If you're nearsighted and you wear contacts, then get contacts for computer distance. And if you go out and drive, then put some cheap that you can get online, whatever, -1, -2, whatever the difference is. For driving, you just put those glasses on top for the, especially if you don't drive much. Now, what your doctor suggested is known as monovision or monocular vision. And that is the idea that one eye that has the contact, usually the dominant eye, gets the distance correction, and the other eye, let's say, I don't know if your right eye is dominant, I'm just pointing to my right eye. And then the left eye, let's say, doesn't need any, your nearsightedness is very minor, so you don't need anything for reading. So basically the idea is that only one eye is usually working. Either, both eyes are open, but one eye is looking far and then one eye is kind of doing the near work. Now, what you said is absolutely true in your brain, because it screws up the balance in your brain. Because what happens is, it's like now you're like lopsided, right? You're always doing it this way, far, this side near. And what I found with people, and I have clients that have monovision correction, either contacts or LASIK or cataracts, lens replacement, they lose their depth perception, because we only have depth perception when both eyes focus on something together. Now, that doesn't happen overnight, and it's not like completely gone, but it's usually weak. And what happens when we have not good depth perception? We trip, we fall, right? Which we don't really need when we get into menopause and get older, right? We don't need that.
Yeah. Or think about it like you're driving down the road. Depth perception is very important to make sure you don't take off somebody's rear view mirror, right?
Exactly.
Without it. Yeah. Because I was just like, no, this makes me feel really weird. And so that's when I actually gave up my contacts. I was like, I'm not wearing these at all anymore. And I already ran into some changes in my eyes where the contacts would feel like, I had bugs crawling on my eyes. Like all of a sudden one day I was just like, I cannot wear these anymore, And so, yeah. And so I'm glad that you gave everybody that answer, because I think that's just a very quick answer. So let's talk about, the idea of glasses, right? There's obviously correction for each kind, but now we have all these progressive and bifocal and trifocal. What do people need to know about those?
So it's so interesting, because my second cousin is an ophthalmologist in Germany, and she and I totally agree on so many things, which always makes me happy. So with progressives or bifocals, right? We all know bifocals, the old fashioned, there's a kind of a line. There's basically one diopter strength for distance and one for reading. And progressives are basically like a progressive, like a kind of a gradation from the top to the bottom. So they don't have like 2 levels of diopters, top and bottom, but they have kind of a progression. Now, the problem with these glasses is, and driving is the one exception where I say driving is the exception, where we know when we look straight, we look far. And when we look down, we look at something close up, let's say the dashboard, right? Or the phone with Google Maps on. Now, in real life, we look straight when we work on the computer. And I've seen so many people like with their chin up, because now they really look close, but they need the lower part of the glasses, because that's the strength they need for close-up vision. Or you go down a flight of stairs, now you're looking down, but that's not reading distance, depending on how tall you are. Or you go on a hike. And when I do my free trainings, people always tell me, I got these glasses, I was so dizzy, I fell down. There's a huge amount of falls that happen. So that's one thing about progressive glasses. And the second thing is they're very expensive. And the third thing is, there was actually research done by an optometrist named Elliot Forrest in the 1980s, and he measured, and this was confirmed in other studies, we have a connection to the creation of astigmatism based on postural habits. So if we always have the chin up, when we look at the computer, you get an astigmatism. There's a kind of a talking of the eyes, because now you're looking down. And usually that ends up in an axis of like 35 in one eye and 145 in the other. So, I actually can look at prescriptions a lot of times and kind of have a sense of what people are doing with their eyes, what their drops is, or if they have more monitors. So when you look at your prescription, astigmatism is shown in the strength in the cylinder, and the angle is the axis. So those two numbers always go hand in hand. And so that's one reason why I get everybody out of progressive glasses. And yes, is it more inconvenient sometimes to need two pairs, one for close-up and another for distance? Or maybe some people need three pairs. They might need one for driving, one for like computer and kind of around the house kind of stuff, and then one for reading. But most people are okay with two pairs of glasses, and you can inexpensively get those online.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting you say that because I have progressive lenses, of course, because the doctor was like, you need these. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I was in Florence at the Duomo. I put my glasses on so I could see, you know, because you can
Right.
see all across Florence. And if anybody's been there, you've got these very steep steps. It's narrow and there's a sea of people. And I was going down the stairs and I had my glasses on still. And all I did was tilt my eyes down. I didn't tilt my head, completely missed the step. And if it wasn't for a person behind me that literally grabbed me by the back of my hoodie, that kept me from falling face flat and probably taking out an entire row of people, I'd have tripped down those entire stairs.
Wow. And you brought up a good point too, Betty. So that's what I see with astigmatism too, with like if you habitually move your eyes without your head, because we really want, and I think I always talk about moving your attention. Like if I see something over there, I'm going to move around, I'm going to look at it straight on. But if you habitually move your eyes without your head, an example of this is people with reading glasses, they put them at the bottom of the nose because they're looking down and reading something, and then they look up and they want to look above the glasses, for instance. You end up with an astigmatism with an axis in the 90-ish area. So that's what I'm saying, that we can do that once in a while, right? That's okay. But if we habitually move our eyes in one direction, let's say, I see that a lot with accountants or people that have a bunch of monitors where they move their eyes left and right, but they don't really move the head along. And that's usually an axis in the 180, 0 degree area. So definitely. And your story is such a perfect example of what I hear so much with progressive glasses.
Yeah, so I have that pair in my car because I recognize that if I'm driving at night, okay, everybody might be nervous. I drive at night with my glasses on so I can see. But if I just wear correction for distance, I can't read my phone map.
Uh-huh.
Right? So
Exactly.
I wear the progressives then, but that's literally the only time I put them on.
And
And
that makes total sense. That's what I tell my clients, for driving, safety first, and especially, and that's why I say sometimes bifocals, if you do a lot of driving and it's something that you feel nervous about, legally in most states, we only need 20/40 visual acuity. So it's not even 20/20 vision that we need, but at the same time, you need to feel comfortable, because if you're not relaxed, then you're stressed. And then if you're stressed, your vision will be blurrier than it usually is. And so, yeah, everybody has their sweet spot, but legally we need 20/40 in most states.
yeah, so I'm glad you brought that. That's a perfect segue. So I want to go back because your story is something that people probably don't think about, right? So they think I've been diagnosed with whatever vision problem I have, that this is either going to be stable or progressively worse. And lo and behold, when they go to their optometrist or ophthalmologist, that's exactly what they get told. And I would bet that now that they've listened to your story, they're probably like, there are days that my eyesight feels better or worse. There are times like, I remember going to Oaxaca and traveling with a bunch of friends, and we were hiking in the mountains and we're looking out over. I didn't bring my glasses with me because I'm lazy and I don't want to wear them and I can't stand them. And, I felt like my vision was better after a week in the mountains of Teotitlán. So I think people think I'm screwed because this is the eyesight I have. But your story in itself showed that there were times that you were able to regain vision, right? And obviously you have now. So there's a ton of things that people can do. So let's start to get into that, because I think women especially expect, I'm just going to have to start wearing glasses now. It's going to be progressively worse. And I'm going to be, the gray-haired Betty White grandma sitting in a rocking chair, with 3 pairs of glasses on my head, right? So let's talk about it.
I want to respond to what you said about your vision changing a little bit, because I call this strains and gains, because everybody's vision changes all the time. I'm not talking about huge amount of swings, but just like our blood pressure, our blood sugar, our heart rate, all these things always change. Our vision is sometimes better or sometimes worse. And it's not just when you go on vacation, but let's say vacation, because maybe you're more relaxed, maybe you're more joyful. So it could be lighting situations. It could be maybe your vision is better in the morning and it's worse in the afternoon. Maybe for me, I always identify, like, I don't like bookkeeping and books and spreadsheets. And when I look at those, I could be on the computer, same distance. I'm like, oh, I don't want to see it. My vision is already getting more blurry, because I don't like it. Versus, doing this where I look at you and we have a nice conversation. So that's one thing. And the other thing is what you do with your eyes has a big difference. Because every time I go to like parks, I meet a lot of these park rangers. They're volunteers, and I notice a lot of times they do the bird watching or they point out the whales and they don't wear glasses. I'm like, and I, older, I'm like, always, did you have cataract surgery? And I'm always curious, right? No. But since I've been doing this and I'm looking far in the distance, my vision has gotten better, which is so true. So that's one example. The other thing is, like I said, noticing the daily, like how, people, tasks, light, computer use or screen use, how all these things affect your vision. Like once you know what makes it better, you already have a clue as what is your own thing. An example, I had a client and she said her vision is worse when she goes in the garden. I'm like, really? Like most people would say the garden. She said, well, all I see is all the weeds, all the work I have to do. I'm like, okay. So for her, the garden was a strain, whereas for most people, like the garden would be a gain. It would make them like joyful and happy. So do you want me to share some of the things that I recommend people do? Some of the
Yeah.
little.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd love for you. Just because I think, like I said, I think people feel like they're sort of trapped, but obviously, like you just said, we've got variety of things that show up differently for people, but that means that there's things that you can do to fix it. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, like, we talked about this a lot, like don't wear your glasses if you don't need them. And with contacts, it's a little bit more tricky because you don't just take them in and out. And with contacts, it's a little story, but we talked about nearsightedness. In most cases, people with contacts are nearsighted, like you were. And if you spend all day indoors at a close distance of the computer, I would definitely get correction for that. That's number one. Don't wear them if you don't need them. And with driving safety, we talked about that already. That's really important. But everything else, I always call this befriend the blur. Like, so not like living in a blurry world, but understanding that a little bit of blur, like if you're in the garden or if you're going to hike, because you can't improve if you're in your full prescription. You have to step it down. And how much to step down, that's what I work with clients. I mean, there's no cookie cutter formula. We also need to know what your prescription is actually giving you in terms of vision. Because sometimes I work with clients and they have 20/10, they're way overcorrected in their glasses. And sometimes they can barely see 20/40. I'm like, you can barely, you're just at the legal limit for driving. But if you don't need glasses and if you're farsighted, wear the weakest reading glasses that you can. That's number one. Another thing, blinking. Blinking is so simple. It's like breathing. We do it automatically, but we don't do it well many times. We want to blink a lot, like every 2 to 3 seconds. And studies have found when we look at screens that we blink less, that we blink sometimes just 2 to 3 times per minute. And guess what? Then you get the dry eye, you get the strain, you get the fatigue. And the blinking is like a little reset. It's almost like this little micro break that you give your eyes. It lubricates the eyes. So that's a simple thing that you can do. Another thing is getting some sunlight into your eyes. I know we've been told that sunlight is really bad for our eyes. So especially sunrise, the first hour after sunrise, there's no UV light. It's really good for your circadian rhythm. It's really good to get some natural light. So don't put your sunglasses on, especially in the morning. Also before sunset, get some natural light exposure, helps with sleep, circadian rhythm. So it's really, really good because eyes are light receivers. And I always say, like how I was so light sensitive, Betty, I had to put glasses on overcast days, sunglasses, because I was so light sensitive. But it's like as if our ears don't want to tolerate sound and you want to just, I have to protect my ears from sound all day long. We do have to do that when we go to a Metallica concert or something. But generally speaking, right, it's like we need to, so assuming you have a working pupil, which means when it's bright, your pupils get very small. When it's dark, they open up, right? Those are the built-in sunglasses. There's always, I want to make sure there's medical disclaimers, if you have certain conditions, like extreme scenarios, like skiing or whatever, definitely wear sunglasses. But many times just wearing a hat or a cap is usually fine. But again, you have to talk to your doctor. But I haven't worn sunglasses in 20 years unless I go like, in the snow and it's bright blue skies, or I'm on the ocean all day in those extreme conditions, but usually in my daily city life. So those are some things that people can do. I mean, there's a lot more we can talk about, but I don't want to talk too long.
Yeah, no, but I think that's good. So they can't, it's just basic stuff. I'm along with you. I have sunglasses. I never wear them. It's literally, it's like the same things you said. I never, ever wear them. So obviously what we do all day can make a big difference, right? And so many people are sitting in front of a computer all day, and then they're also sitting in front of their phone. So anybody that's watching the video, they've got their head buried in their phone and or their iPad or something like that. So with everything you just said, I would think that we're going to see greater vision problems in generations to come, because we're becoming more and more focused in on little bitty screens and less taking in the world around us. Like, where do you see that going? Like, I could see that we're going to have some serious vision problems in generations to come.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. I mean, I did a 3-day event online last fall, and everybody after like 30 hours on the computer had better vision. So the computers do not have to be the devil, but you need to really know. And obviously we did 3 days of like vision practices, right? You have to know what to do. Blinking is one of those simple things. Now, the problem with computers is not just that the eyes are looking at the near point all day, which is like, think of like flexing your bicep, holding a big dumbbell, because the muscles of the eye and the ciliary muscle around the lens, they are more engaged when we look up close. So it's more of an effort. It doesn't mean that it's just looking up close is bad for your eyes, right? But if we do it too long and if we're straining, that will be a vision killer, number one. The other thing is looking near and far. I mean, they have the 20-20-20 rule. I always say, who gets up every 20 minutes and looks up 20 seconds, 20 feet in the distance? I always say, put your computer in front of a window like I have. It's easy I can just look out really far in the distance, build your environment to support you. The other thing I see with computers is it's like a fake 3D. So, that three-dimensional vision that we really need to build, that gives us depth perception. On the computer, we have these, I see a room behind you, your door and all this. But yeah, it's just a flat screen, which is backlit. So it's also like, it's really hard for our eyes to focus on something that is backlit versus an object that reflects the light, like a book, for instance. And then the other thing with computers, which is something that is really important, people do not think about their peripheral vision. So really good eyesight is just basically more the word for visual acuity, means how sharp you see, right? 20/20 or whatever. But there's so much more in vision. There's the peripheral vision, the binocular vision, how the eyes work together, the night vision, the color vision. All these things have to work together to give you optimal vision. Now, peripheral vision, when we look at, especially when you wear glasses, you have this concept that everything behind the glass is sharp and everything outside the glass is super blurry. Now, our peripheral vision is blurry. I mean, blurry might not be the right word, but not great for everyone. We don't see, like in the outer periphery, you can have your hands, like move your fingers next to your ears, and look straight ahead, and you move them backwards, back of your head, and then move them forward. There will be a point where you see them, but you only really see movement in the outer periphery. But we usually see movement and then we turn around, like, what is the thing? Or if you're driving, you might see a car on the side, but you don't even see the color because we don't have any color perception in the outer periphery. So, but both is important. The central vision, which gives us that sharp vision, and the peripheral field. And with glasses, and even glasses and computer is the worst combination, but generally speaking, we kind of get this tunnel vision, right? We focus on that central vision, like we put all the load and we kind of ignore the side vision. It's almost like when I used to work in an office, and sometimes you would stand next to a coworker and they were just so like in their computer, and you're like, at some point you think like they would see you and you tap them on the shoulder like, oh my God, you started me. And that's an example. So moving things in the periphery, if you have a second screen, put a little YouTube video in the corner of your, like something that is moving, or a little GIF or something just to stimulate and have the room lit so that you're not sitting in a dark room with a computer screen on or TV, because then now your peripheral vision really shuts down because it's dark, and that is more strain on your central vision.
So I have a scary conversation or story to tell you about that. So I had a client of mine that was working on a startup when COVID broke out. And she was the head of marketing. You know, you can imagine a new startup company, they're
Right.
bootstrapped, all this stuff. She's working and has little kids and stuff, but she's working like 18, 19 hours a day. And she's on a computer up in front of it, glasses on all the time. And she's like, I had like a year and a half of that was just brutal. And somewhere along the way, she was driving with her kids in the car one day, and she was never had left the city of Dallas. So, you know, traffic all the time, there's stuff around her all the time. She got outside of the city limits on her way to Austin. And as soon as she got out where she was on the open road and there was nothing in her periphery, her brain could not understand where she was in space and time.
Wow.
Like she had to pull over the car because she couldn't drive anymore. Like her brain, and she went and saw a specialist, and he was like, your brain has lost its understanding of the periphery. She could not drive for a year. She had to go through all kinds of visual training. I'd never heard of that before. I wish I could remember the name of it now, but literally she had, if there was not something next to her for her brain to sort of pick up on from the peripheral, because the response was kind of, you know, backfired in the brain because of so much what you just described. I mean, imagine how frightening that would be, is all of a sudden your brain just cannot tell that there's a ground beneath you, a bridge in front of you, because there's nothing for it to perceive against that because you're the only car on the road.
Right. That is, I mean, that's definitely extreme. And in the periphery, we talk a lot about, I teach a lot of movement. So natural vision, people with good vision, with eyesight good, they don't really know what they're doing. But if you ask them, do you see things moving, the room moving? They would always be, yeah, of course. The second your eyes move or you move, it seems like everything else is moving the opposite way. So when you're driving, you're moving forward, but it feels like, you know, the side of the road is moving almost backwards, like a dolly in a Hollywood movie or something. So, and people with poor vision usually don't see any movement. And so I work a lot with specific techniques that are too hard to share here on this podcast. You have to, they're a little more intricate. But just noticing, maybe when you go on your next walk, it doesn't matter if it's forward or backwards, or if you jump up and down on a rebound, or notice when you go up, it seems like the room goes down. Obviously, you are the one moving, but it's that sensation that everything is always fluid and moving. And that might initially be when you're staring, when you're used to that strain with the glasses, that might feel very unsettling, but the more you can relax into that, the better your vision will get. So that's sometimes we have to uncover that and slowly, you know, undo some of those kind of like, it's almost like your vision, your brain is just so frozen in the state of, you know, using the glasses, and there's no movement. And people ask me about cataracts all the time. I'm like, your lens, your eyes need to move, not just side to side, near and far. You know, there needs to be movement. And so that's something that we have to kind of work on. It's like, and I really try to teach people to make the daily habits. So what I do is not eye exercises at all. We do things that are practices or relax exercises that are more teaching you what your eyes on your brain actually need, you know, what they crave. And you have to undo some of those bad habits. That's really what it is. So I don't spend any time doing vision practices at all anymore. But initially, you have to just kind of to undo the, you know, the bad habits that you have. And there's mental, emotional components we haven't talked about either. I mean, there's so many pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, let's briefly talk about that, because obviously stress, like anybody would go, okay, stress is obvious because when I'm stressed and tired, my eyes get weak and my vision gets worse. So let's talk a little bit about the mental emotional too. We don't have to go massively into it, but
Right.
people are like,
I mean,
my role.
yeah, so generally speaking, what I found, so nearsighted people feel very comfortable in their little close-up space, right? You said you were nearsighted, so there's more of the sensation of I feel good in my little bubble, but anything out there is like scary. And that might be the reason that you got nearsighted in the first place, especially if you got glasses as a child, you know, as a young adult, something didn't feel safe. A lot of times I ask people, what happened in your life, like 1 or 2 years before you got glasses? or we moved, or my parents divorced, or I got bullied. Like there's usually something where your nervous system is like, this does not feel safe. So, and so it protects you by kind of making the things like so you don't see them and they don't affect you so much. So that's one thing. And then you get glasses, which then, so that's usually the worst thing to do. So anxiety is a more of a connection with nearsightedness. There's more worry of things to come, the future, the distance, looking forward, versus a farsighted person is more what I find, they don't want things close to you. Like I was definitely that. Like I didn't want to cuddle with my mom. I was like, get away from me. Like I didn't want, I wanted to have my safe distance from everybody. And we are farsighted people have more tendency as we get older, adults, help everybody else. But when it comes to, oh, I'm fine, not treating yourself like really like you're out there for everybody else. And so that's one thing with and astigmatism is a little bit of a confusion. So you're not really sure, what is my true self? Like, what do I really want? What do I really feel? And that was also, I had astigmatism quite strongly in my right eye. I never knew what I wanted. I always asked, should I do this or this? Even with the group that we're in, right? I mean, should I join that one or that one? I couldn't, it took me, and I'm really good now. And astigmatism is also a little bit of that mental, like, quote unquote, ADD, not the clinical diagnosis, but more like you're jumping from task to task. You really struggle with focusing on something. So that's kind of the astigmatism connection. And then, I mean, I quote Louise Hay on this. She talked about cataracts, like dark future, no joy in the future. And how many times do we get cataracts when we are in retirement age, right? That mid-60s. So like, what is the second part of your life? So that's something that I think we can look at. And glaucoma is a disease of the optic nerve. And there's always a problem with pressure. Either the pressure is too high, the intraocular pressure, or it's normal and your blood pressure is maybe too low and the nerves don't get enough, healthy nutrients. But basically, glaucoma is often related to putting too much pressure on yourself, being a perfectionist, having all ducks have to be in a row at all times. So, when we look at these different mental and emotional aspects, we can definitely see a very, clear picture. And it's part of the work, quote unquote, to be open to looking at those emotional factors.
Absolutely. Now, we haven't talked about this one. We've talked a little bit about all the other, or most of the other, not all, but most of the other diseases of the eyes or aging and other things. Macular degeneration, right? Which has a fairly strong genetic underpinning, not a guarantee that you'll get it. But it is specifically, damage to the retina of the eye and things like that. What do you see with macular degeneration?
You mean on the emotional level?
Yeah, emotional and just in general, like, are there things people can do that you have found as a vision expert? Even if it runs, because like it runs in people's families. And so they start getting worried. Oh, my mother had this, so therefore I might have vision problems. What are some of the things that you sort of point out if that happens to be in their history?
So for those of you watching the video, I'm showing an anatomy of an eyeball model here. And there's basically this little yellow spot in the back of our eyes. That's called the fovea lutea, the yellow spot. That's why we have the sharpest and best vision. And that's inside the macula. And that's when we get macular degeneration, meaning the cells, basically die in the center of vision. That means wherever you look, you don't see, let's say you're at a traffic light and you look at the green, but you don't see the green, you only see the rest of the traffic light. Or you look at somebody's face, if it gets really bad, you don't see their face, you see their hair and everything else. So macular degeneration is emotionally more connected to you don't want to see what you're looking at. There's something in your life. On a physical level, it could be several factors. Usually it's malnutrition. So there could be malnutrition. We need lutein, zeaxanthin, astaxanthin, all these plant pigments that we need to get from the diet. They come in like dark leafy greens. Those are some sources. Algae, the astaxanthin is in microalgae. So if we don't get enough of these nutrients, so that could be a reason that people get macular degeneration. It could also be too much sun. There could be excessive amount of light. Most people, that's probably not the case, especially when we spend time indoors. Also, macular degeneration, there's a so-called age-related macular degeneration, which is basically usually like 70s, 80s, right? and then there is the myopic. So strong myopia, strong nearsightedness comes with an elongation. So if you're watching it, so if you're myopic, your eyeball looks more like an egg extreme, right? In extreme shape. It's more oval than round. Now, when you squeeze that, imagine that the pressure on the retina, there's just more pressure on the retina from the shape of the eyeball. So there's also something called myopic macular degeneration. So that could be, that's what I'm saying. I had clients that had like -11, -12, and then 12 weeks they got down to -8, -9. While you're not out of glasses, you like the more you can reduce the strength or the level of your myopia, the better it is. So what I found, like there's certain things that I think are helpful. First of all, maybe you have to get a supplement for, that has these ingredients, but I really tell people you have to eat healthy. I mean, ditch the sugar, ditch the alcohol, ditch all the bad stuff, get your healthy veggies and fruit, get all the, rainbow colors. We've heard this over and over again. Omega-3 fatty acids, super important for brain health and for eye health. So those are some things that people can do for macular degeneration. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah. Well, and that's, those ingredients are also really good for dry eye because a lot
Right.
of, especially women going through perimenopause and menopause, all of a sudden we start having dry eye because everything dries up, your skin, your mucous membranes, everywhere, down there, up above. So the eyes often get dry, and then again, it goes down to also diet. And if we're nourishing our body appropriately, it usually isn't as bad,
Yeah. And there's one more thing for dry eyes I want to talk about, which is something I call it palming. Some people know it as cupping, but it's basically you cover your closed eyes, you clean your hands, obviously, and you cover your closed eyes with your cupped hands in a way that usually I tell people to cross their fingers over their nose so that you can still breathe and not squishing the nose, and you want to have your elbows supported, and you just give your eyes a little break. And I recommend for palming, you kind of want to come into relaxing memory. So not think about your shopping list or all the things you need to do, but really bring up a happy little memory in your mind and just be like, so this little break. And oftentimes when I teach this, just a minute of that, people, their eyes, and you open your eyes afterwards, you slowly take your hands away. I used to do it sometimes for 20 minutes, well, however long, it could be 30 seconds, a minute. And then you take your hands away and you wait. You keep your eyes closed initially, and then you open with 5 quick blinks and 5 gentle squeezes of your eyes. And everybody says my eyes feel more lubricated, pretty much everybody. So just this little break, maybe just closing your eyes a little bit more, right? And then the blinking, obviously. I found people even got off prescription medications for dry eye with blinking, with palming, and then omega-3 fatty acids, and having that kind of routine, improving the blood flow around the eyes, maybe castor oil. I mean, there can be different things, not in the eye, but around the eyes, getting your meibomian glands checked by your eye doctor. Maybe you've, I didn't even know, but, the eyeliner that sometimes, we can actually block the meibomian glands. So maybe you have a dysfunction that you want to, rule that out. But yeah, there's so many things. And then hormonal, which is all what you do, right?
Yes.
Working on, so improving that. Yeah.
Yes, there's all that. So I think the big take-home message for everybody is there's actually things they can do, right? Because this is obviously how you work with people to help improve their vision, right? Obviously to make all of those things better. I think that helps everybody know that there's kind of a way out, that we don't have to, because some of us may be okay. We've got ourselves in a position where we're like, oh, I'm fine. I have to wear reading glasses. But I think almost everybody will say, I don't want it to get worse. But I think everybody needs to know that we might possibly be able to make it significantly better,
Yeah,
So,
I think that's really the key message. And I always call readers or cheaters the gateway drug, because you will end up in bifocals and progressives. Trust me, everybody does. And you don't want to even get started with this. And the other thing I want to say is you have just like what you teach, right? You have way more power over your health than any doctor does, and any of the, your habits, your lifestyle, your diet, your sleep, your stress level, all this stuff it's really, and I tell people, it's really in your control how your eyesight looks like in the next 5, 10, 20 years. It's really in your control. Yes, we have genetics. Yes, we have aging, but it doesn't have to mean that you go downhill. If you watch the Blue Zones, you look at all the centenarians, notice how few of them wear glasses. So there is things that we can do. So yes, we have those things. We might have bad genes, but the genes don't really, we know epigenetics, nutrigen. We know that our habits and our daily choices have a bigger impact on our health outcomes, including your vision, than really all this other stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been not only fascinating, but I think, everybody's probably learned at least 3 or 4 things that they can do to help improve their vision or just feel better. Their eyes feel better, their brain feels better. So can you tell my people listening, the Menopause Mastery Tribe, how they can find you?
So I am known as Holistic Vision Coach on Instagram and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel and I have a website. My naturallyclearvision.com is my website, naturallyclearvision.com. And I have a guide, it's 10 habits. And I have a guide especially for menopausal women for 10 habits that you can start doing today. Some of the things we talked about a little bit, but this goes more into depth. And I also talk about like what works for dry eyes. So it's going more into the specifics. So that's a free guide that you can download.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we have all of that in our show notes, and so everybody can download it there. My gosh, this has been number one, really fun, but super informative. Like I learned a bunch of new things today that I can use for myself for sure, for sure. I thank you for being on, Claudia.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's so empowering to know that little things you can do to really have a big impact on how well you see when you get older.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for listening to Menopause Mastery. Hey, if you like this episode, just do me a favor and hit the subscribe button up above, and I'll be back with you next week.